My name is Jono, and over the past few weeks I've been developing a VR horror game that I've decided to call Voidwalkers. So a little bit about the game. Voidwalkers is, as I just said, a VR horror game. You play as a character who wakes up from cryo sleep on a sort of freight spaceship kind of thing, like a delivery ship. And you wake up to find that everyone else is gone and the ship is almost pitch black. The point of this game is to sort of explore the ship, find out what happened, find out where everyone went, and then get off the ship. However, even though everyone is gone, or it seems like everyone is gone, you are not alone. The enemies themselves, well, not so much enemies, but the monsters themselves are invisible, and the only way you'll be able to tell where they are is the lights closest to them will flicker. Alright, so the actual development. First thing that I wanted to do and did was I opened up the Unreal Engine 5 VR blueprint and then followed a tutorial to add hands onto the VR controller and then have those hands move to specific poses depending on which buttons you pressed, which was both easier and harder than I was expecting. There was a lot of coding that actually went into it, but fundamentally all it seems to be is just you press a button, it changes a bool, and then that bool changes the hand pose in the animation tree. So with that functionality, I then also added grab system. You can pick up objects and the hand will move to the specific pose depending on the object that it's picked up. AI currently is just very basic. It kind of just picks a random point in the world, moves to that point, stays there, waits a couple seconds, does it again, moves on, rinse and repeat kind of deal. And it'll move through all of the colliders and triggers that are on all the lights, and it'll trigger those lights to flicker. And that's how you will be able to tell where they are and know that you need to not go that way. The torch. Seems weird that it has its own subsection in this devlog, but being a horror game and the power on the ship is like minimalized, as in it's gone into almost like emergency shutdown kind of deal. The ship's very dark. The game is very dark. So all you have to see is the sort of emergency lights, which are similar to what would be on an airplane if the airplane was gone into like night mode. So all you have to see is a torch and those walkway lights, essentially. So to make that, all I did was copy the gun from the VR template and then change the model and a couple other things. And instead of, when you pull the trigger, instead of firing the projectile, it just enables and disables a spotlight. And that gives you the torch effect. I've also added a battery system to it, so the longer it stays on, it'll drain battery and whatever. And then once it hits 0, the torch goes out and you are in the dark. All you have to follow is the emergency lights to try and find a battery, which leads me on to the next thing. The character itself has power. Well, your suit has power. You attach your torch to your suit. As long as you have a battery in your suit as well, the battery will charge, but that'll then drain the battery power. So once your battery hits 0, you can no longer charge your torch. It might be a pretty bold thing to say, but I think making an inventory system for a VR game is a hell of a lot easier than trying to make an inventory system for a 2D game. 2D game being a mouse and keyboard game. Because when you're making an inventory system for a mouse and keyboard game, you have to worry about UI and collisions and scriptable objects and a whole bunch of other stuff. Whereas in VR, if you're holding an object, I'll use the torch as an example. If you want to attach your torch to your torch socket, you just put your hand in a box and let it go. And on the release function, it just does a quick check to see if the torch was let go in the torch socket. If it was, attach the torch to it. That's it. That's the inventory system. And you could do the same thing for like a pocket or like a satchel kind of thing. If you let go of a say anything with the grab component, which is a part of the Unreal Engine's VR template. Anything with a grab component can be picked up. So when you, say if you have the satchel or the inventory or whatever, if you drop something and it's in that box and it has a grab component on it, just attach it to that box collider or box trigger or whatever. There you go. There's your inventory system. If you want to add weight to that, I don't know, something like after you let go of the object in that box, do a little for each loop kind of thing. For every object that's in that box currently, have like a weight assigned to each of those items and add it, and then do something with the walk speed depending on that value. The doors are pretty simple. Basically just if you have a key card, also there's an inventory for the key card, it's on your hand. For the key cards, if you put a key card in front of the key scanner on the door, it'll do another check to see if the sort of key card ID on the card itself is greater than or equal to the value assigned to the door. If it is, open the door. So this allows me to add some doors that you can't open and some doors that you can open. There's only two key cards. There's the key card you get at the start and then the captain's key card. So this allows me to not let you open the captain's quarters door with the key card you get at the start, but once you do find the captain's key, you can get rid of your starting key card and only use the captain's key card, and that'll still open all the doors. I also want to, later on in development, add a sort of random event that'll go through all of the doors and check which ones are open, get the closest door to the player and close it. I want to do that because just like imagine that you're staring down a hallway, there's a door that you've just left open slightly to your left, you're staring down the hallway watching the lights flicker and they're not moving, like the lights aren't flickering any closer to you, and you're concentrating on what's making the lights flicker, and then all of a sudden the door next to you closes. And imagine that it would scare the absolute shit out of someone. And that's what I want, because it's a horror game. So the ship itself, for the first few weeks of development, I was just working off of a basic placeholder model for each floor of the ship. So level 1, like the first floor was one model, the second floor was another model, third floor was another model again. Now, I realized as development continues and more detail gets added into those models, I'm thinking that could start to affect performance in a really bad way, because even though you're on the first floor and all you can see is the first floor and the roof of the first floor is actually the floor of the second floor. So even though you're still on the first floor at like the back of the ship, technically, as far as the camera is concerned, you can see the front of the ship on the second floor, even though you actually can't. As far as it's concerned, it can. So it's loading all of that at once. So I decided to do something that I've always been intrigued about and always tried to do, but just never got quite right. And that is modular environmental building assets. So I've gone through and remade the whole ship using modular parts, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. And I imagine that this would allow me to start using occlusion culling, which tells the camera not to render anything that you can't see. Which, to anyone that doesn't know programming or doesn't know anything about game development, that's just how you assume it works. For ages, I assumed that's how things work. It wasn't until like Horizon Zero Dawn and Death Stranding and games like that, I know those games came out very far apart. It wasn't until I found out that those games do that it's a common thing that happens. That's why I've gone through and remade that, and it's working really well. Alright, so that's most of the development up until this point. There is a few more other things that I've been working on and so on that I haven't included in this devlog because I'm not ready to talk about them yet. So I'm pretty confident where it is now, in pretty good place. First playable demo should be ready soon. Obviously that doesn't mean the game's finished, it's still a way off, but I want to have some like puzzles and voice acting, and I want to get a full body inverse kinematics type of thing in. That isn't yet, because so far you just have floating hands, but I want there to be a full body. And the point of the voice lines would be to help guide the player where they have to go next, not just you start in a room, figure shit out. You'll actually have someone that sort of tells you what to do, but that person is you. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that relating to anything that I've spoken about or anything you think you would like to see, leave them in the comments, and see you in the next one.